Hello YouTube, this is Matthew, and today I want to make a confession. This confession has to do with a disconnect between a philosophical belief that I have, and my actions related to that belief. So, I don't believe in free will. I think I've heard the arguments for determinism, compatibilism, and libertarian free will. Again, libertarian not being the political libertarian in that case, but libertarian in the philosophical sense. When you're talking about free will, means basically total freedom. If you're, and as far as I can tell, the only people that believe in libertarian free will are those that believe in God. They believe God can imbibe you with libertarian free will. That's why you have to pay for. That's why you're tainted with the sin of Adam and Eve and the apple and all that good stuff. Compatibilists believe you can reconcile free will and determinism. Basically, they're just redefining what free will means. So they would say, in the context of human relations, you do have a degree of free will, but it's just not the libertarian kind of free will. You have certain choices come from you, even though ultimately the universe is governed by biological, chemical, and physical laws. And then there's determinism, which says libertarian free will is incompatible, or any kind of free will, Determinists say any kind of free will is incompatible with determinism. Again, the idea that, not only, actually, determinism is not only that the universe is governed by biological, chemical, and physical laws, but that those biological, chemical, and physical laws determined what was going to happen. So it is, the best example, or a common example used is a series of dominoes being knocked over. So the first domino that was knocked over was the Big Bang, and then that led to every other domino being knocked over, which was every other event in the history of the universe. So the determinist would say, the fact that I'm making this video right now and saying these exact words was determined by the Big Bang. And generally determinists, they separate themselves from what is called predetermination, or fatalism, insofar as no one knows what the future holds. So your choices can still matter. You're just not the author of those choices. Now I bring this up because I realized something not too long ago. I believed determinism intellectually, but I didn't believe it in my personal life. I wasn't acting as if the world behaved deterministically. I wasn't acting as if free will was an illusion. I was acting as if I had free will. I was acting as if I made choices. I was acting as if I was totally responsible for those choices. And so I'm trying to work myself out of that, you know? I'm trying to, if possible, reason my way out of the little bits of free will that are still in my head. You know, free will just, it does seem to be a very powerful idea. Now, the neuroscientist Sam Harris says the idea is ultimately untenable, even subjectively, even from a subject experience. So at that point, it is more of a, if that's true, free will is more of a cultural idea. So we absorb from our culture the idea that, okay, you know, you have a will, you have the ability to you know, choose orange juice or apple juice. You have the ability to punch me in the face and not punch me in the face. You have the ability to study for your math test or not study for your math test. Like you make those choices, and you can do either. That's basically the way that we, the way that many people, let's say in the Western world, experience the world. You can do one thing or the other. But determinism says, no, you were going to do that one thing based on a series of causes and effects. I was going to be filming this video right now based on a series of causes and effects. I know I'm repeating myself, but I'm really trying to hammer this idea home. And partly in the hopes of spreading my understanding of determinism, and partly in the hopes of, you know, convincing myself emotionally. Because I've convinced myself intellectually that we have no free will, but I haven't yet convinced myself emotionally that we don't have free will. I'm still stuck in this thought process that I have free will. And so I'll think about, you know, a mistake I made a year ago, let's say, and I'll think, dang, like I'm such an idiot, I'm such a terrible person, why did I do that? I hate myself. You know, you just go through all these negative thoughts related to that mistake or what you're perceiving as a mistake. But that's incompatible with the idea of free will. Or at least it doesn't make sense to believe in free will and to curse, you know, get upset with yourself for making a mistake a year ago. You were determined to make that mistake a year ago. And any mistakes you make in the future, you're determined to make those mistakes as well. You know, and I think it's because free will is such a dominant idea. It is hard to get out of that. And part of that, I think, is based on people's moral beliefs. So a common refrain is, well, if you don't have free will, then the legal system makes no sense. If a drunk driver murdered, if a drunk driver accidentally killed somebody, it's not their fault. They were determined to do that. We can't blame them. We can't arrest them. We can't convict them. We can't sentence them to, you know, this number of years in prison, or give them this fine, or force them to pay this amount. You know, we can't do anything because they're just a robot. They're just a robot in this world. Responding to stimuli, and that's it. So justice, morality, it's all thrown out the window. Anything goes, because ultimately we're not the authors of our actions, the authors of our fate. And I think many people find that very persuasive, because of because of how ingrained it is that we have free will. But ultimately, I think it's a misunderstanding of what determinists are arguing for. If only for the idea, like if only for damage control purposes, if somebody, drunk driving might be we can use that as an example. If someone drinks and drives and then harms somebody, we can, to try to prevent that from happening again, we can, do something. Again, we can put them in jail. We can give them a fine. We can do this, that, or the other thing. It's not to say that choices don't matter. So if I'm with a friend, and he's completely, drunk, and he says, "Okay, Matthew, can I drive home?" I'm gonna be like, "No, I'm not gonna let you drive home, dude. Calm down. We'll call an Uber or something. You're not driving home." Now, that it matters whether my friend drives home drunk or not. That matters. He's just not ultimately responsible for it. And I'm not, and it matters whether I tell him if he can or not. I'm just not ultimately responsible for that either. So, I see these things as reconcilable, but, I emotionally, I guess they don't seem reconcilable in some form or fashion. But that's probably just misunderstanding of kind of a human being's place in the world. Because you're going to make choices no matter what. For a second, let's just assume, if free will's true, you're going to make choices. If free will's not true, you're going to make choices. If compatibilism is true, you make choices. So if the universe is totally random, if everything is based on pure randomness, you make choices. So of course, and human beings are social animals, which to some degree limits or dictates those choices. So I hope I don't know if this is terribly clear. I'm still, as I said, I'm still struggling with this. But it just goes back to, again, recognizing both the impact of my choices and the fact that I did not create myself. I'm an animal, so I'm governed. I am the product of I am the product of, and I'm governed by biological laws. I'm governed by human psychology. I'm governed by human history. I'm governed by my culture. I'm governed by my language. I'm governed by my family. And so I have trouble, I guess, really seeing where this free will comes into play. Because to one degree or another, I think even many people, they understand the pitfalls of free will. So if you're hanging out with a 3-year-old, and the 3-year-old hasn't eaten all day, and so the 3-year-old gets starts getting a little upset, or maybe cries, or just whining, and is irritated. You try to calm them down, they just get more and more irritated, and then someone's like, oh, they're just hangry. Why are they hangry? Because they didn't eat all day. And we don't say, oh, you as a 3-year-old, you need to use your free will to not be hangry. You need to use your free will to be act like, feel totally normal in the situation, and then you'll get food and everything will be good. No, we're like, the child hasn't eaten all day, and so they're upset. They're the cause, the effect. Or, if somebody experiences a psychotic breakdown, and they're behaving extremely irrationally, and they're just doing things that are dangerous themselves or other people. We don't say, oh, you need to use your free will to stop being psychotic, or you need to stop using your free will. You need to use your free will, to end your psychotic breakdown. Now, and that's actually a good example, because we're going to try to prevent the person from hurting themselves and other people, right? Because we don't desire the outcome where they hurt themselves or other people. I think it's a perfectly reasonable outcome, or reasonable desire. It's a reasonable outcome to want to avoid. But we don't blame them. We don't say it's your fault you're having a psychotic breakdown, and you can just will yourself out of it. So we can think of so many examples where like free will doesn't exist. And I also just think that the more I examine my life, the less, when I like rationally examine kind of my actions and my past and other people's actions, other people's past, and I believe less and less in free will. And this goes beyond just occasionally being on autopilot. Like when you're driving, it's like, okay, if you know how to drive, then you just drive, and you don't really think about it, because there's a little, the part of your brain that information is in your brain, and you can use it actively, and you don't have to think about it anymore. Whereas when you're learning to drive, like me, it's like, you have to think about everything. Okay, I gotta put the turn signal on, use this brake in this situation, don't want to hit that car, okay, stop, there's a pedestrian coming. You have to think about everything, because it's new information. I haven't done it a lot before. So when I say, when I look at my own life experience, I believe less and less in free will. It goes far beyond just autopilot. It goes far beyond like, oh, I just wasn't thinking in this situation, I was just doing something. Like most of the time, there's that kind of autopilot-like experience. That's more like the mean, that's more like the rule than the exception. I don't really see myself making choices that are deriving from myself. I mean, I see myself making choices based on basically just making choices without even really thinking much about them. And even when I think about a particular event for a really, really long time, it's like, okay, I'm trying to examine everything clearly here, so I know what I'm doing, and I want to, I don't want to make a rash decision here. I'm just gonna truly use my head to make the best decision. At some level, that just seems like an illusion. Often I'll just end up making choices that maybe I was going to make anyway. Find a way to justify some post hoc rationalization. That's the wrong word. Find some way to justify a already existing belief or opinion or desire. Yeah, I don't think I'm explaining this terribly well, but I did want to make this video, partly because I've struggled in the past and continue to struggle with this idea of forgiveness. So I'm not a Christian, but the Christian concept of forgiveness is quite appealing to me. To one degree or another. And free will, or a lack of belief in free will, seems to go hand in hand with a degree of forgiveness. If people are not the authors of their decisions, then it makes perfect sense to forgive them. It makes perfect sense to say, well, ultimately, you weren't the cause of that choice, even though you were the one that made that choice. So, why would I hold a grudge against you? It doesn't make sense. It makes sense to hold grudges if you're responsible, like if you are the ultimate author of that decision. But if you weren't, then the anger and resentment and bitterness and hatred really kind of don't follow. So I remember saying in the video about the lack of a self, how that could help you in your personal life. Well, I think getting rid of the belief in free will can help you in your personal life. For that very reason. Obviously, if you feel like someone wronged you in a certain way, you're probably going to be a little upset or annoyed or angry or whatnot. You're an animal. You're going to have a certain reaction, and that's okay, and that's normal. That's healthy. But if you can take a step back and kind of view the situation as a series of causes and effects, then I think it's much easier to forgive yourself and other people. Like, you did that in that situation because you were determined to do that. That's what you were. That's what the whole history, the whole prior history of the universe had led up to. And maybe it was a painful experience, or maybe someone got upset with you, or you got upset with someone, or maybe it was undesirable. Maybe you don't want to have that experience again. But that was what you were able to do in that moment. You weren't able to do anything else, because if you were, you would have done something else. I do find that particularly liberating, and I think more and more people should think about that. I think we need to get over this idea, like, oh, we're bad people because we have free will and we made stupid decisions. It's not that simple. In fact, I don't know if I'd want to live in a world where that was the case. I guess I'll end this video by saying I'm not entirely satisfied with the theoretical bedrock I put forth. Kant, Immanuel Kant's been in the back of my mind screaming, well, if you can't emotionally, if you can't emotionally accept free will or accept determinism, then maybe determinism is wrong. Or it's, people thinking when I say that I, don't experience, when I feel like I'm experiencing free will less and less, they will interpret it as, oh, you're just talking about that one time when you were on autopilot, or this one time when, you've done this activity 1,000 times, so you don't have to think about it. It's like when I'm deciding to go on a date with my girlfriend, I'm really thinking about that. I'm really making that decision. When I decide to study for that chemistry exam, I'm really making that decision. That's my experience. That's what I feel. You can't deny that. Or people might put it slightly more mildly and just be like, well, I accept the illusion of free will. I can't get away from the illusion. That's it. You might say you might say the universe acts deterministically, and you might be factually true, but life is not all about, or we're not fact machines, and free will just seems to be one of those necessary illusions, and you can't get away from it, and so therefore ipso facto we have free will of a sort. And I actually used to kind of go along with that idea that, yeah, it's a necessary illusion. But I think that is, I don't think I was right about that. I don't think it's a necessary illusion. And in fact, I think other cultures don't have this same perspective. Well, this video's gotten quite long, so I think I'll end it there. Thank you for watching, and take care.